Howdy. It looks like I'm on. I wanted to. I was going to try something new here and see if I could share some slides with everybody. Hey, there we go. All right, look at that. I'm here to. I know I'm printing something here. I'm Frank Gregory, and I am your DC to Wall Street guru here at Option Pit, and I'm coming on today for state of the market because we had a off-cycle election yesterday, and I want to talk to you about that. Sorry about all the printing in the background. I don't know where that came from. My wife and I share a printer in the house, and sometimes she doesn't realize I'm doing this. So anyway, we had an off cycle election yesterday, and it had some big ramifications. Certainly shifting some political tides. There's going to be some market recalibration, and we're also going to touch on the shutdown, which is entering what I would call a critical phase. And if you love records, we've set one for the old shutdown. So great stuff going on. But I'm going to, with today, let's just jump right in. We had an election yesterday, off cycle, with big ramifications in Virginia, New Jersey, New York City, and California. Virginia, governor's race, Abigail Spanberger, Democrat, wins. New Jersey Governor Mickey Sherrill wins. New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani won. I got to tell you, if you are and in California, Prop 50 redistricting win for Newsom out there. I got to tell you, if you're a Republican insider waking up this morning, or even a moderate Democrat in New York City, you got a hell of an election hangover going on. And I think there's, like in New York, I can tell you, I live right on the the Hudson River here. In New Jersey, looking out over what was once the great city of New York. I got to think that you got a lot of Curtis Sliwa voters and others who are regretting their decision not to put some emphasis behind Governor Cuomo, because if you add those two numbers together, the Sliwa votes and the Cuomo votes, it exactly tied what Mamdani did. So could have been interesting if they had done that, but they didn't. So instead, and by the way, I've got a lot of personal things to say about this, but we're going to keep it on the straight and narrow. Just throw some facts out there and look at what we might be able to do at Option Pit to trade on some of this news. With that said, I do feel like I'm living on the banks of the Seine or the Thames, staring at another once great city about to collapse, but whole different story there. I think the takeaway here is, with this Democrat sweep, it is an early referendum on Trump policies. I think voters broke towards Democrats. If you look at even in blue and purple areas, a lot of breaking towards the Democratic side here. If you look, all the pundits on whether it's CNN or wherever are calling this an early referendum on the Trump White House, and I think to some degree it is. It's certainly going to have implications for next year's midterms, particularly the California Prop 50 win, and I think internally for the Democrats, it's going to be interesting to watch because you're going to have a lot of divisiveness. While they're very good at election time, all coming together to support their candidates, I think internally you've had this ongoing move, particularly in some certain major cities, of an emboldened radical leftist wing of the Democratic Party, the progressive left, and here they are. They just won the largest city in the U.S., one of the largest cities in the world. They now have a very, very progressive, actually, declared socialist mayor of a very large city. So they're going to put a lot of pressure internally throughout other districts to embrace these more radical leftist candidates going into next year's midterms. And so I think actually the Democratic midterm, cycle, and just that those parties, pre-elections going into the big one in November is going to be quite interesting. So that's just my little take. It's going to be fun to watch that. So, big issues, high turnouts. I mean, New York City set a record for turnouts, high turnout of young people in New York City. Believe it or not, 80% of women under 30 voted for Mamdani in New York City. 80%. If you don't think, I love when I hear people say the education system in this country is not working. It's working exactly like it's been designed over the last couple of decades. It's achieving all of its goals. So the top issues coming out of the exit polls were cost of living, healthcare, shutdown fatigue, and voters were certainly split on Trump personally. Very, while he gets good marks for some, things going on, in other parts of the world, how he's handling some international issues, very negative on his handling of the shutdown, particularly recent comments around SNAP benefits and back pay for furloughed workers. That really came out as hot button issues and galvanized a lot of voters that this is just, not fair, not right, whatever terms you want to use. And so, that hit him negatively. And, as that prior bullet shows, shutdown fatigue, whoever is at fault for not coming to an agreement to end this shutdown, the Republicans are getting more blame than the Democrats. So that fatigue is weighing on Trump, his policies, and the party as a whole. So what does this do? Well, it certainly erodes support on on the shutdown brinkmanship and like the ongoing fights around ACA subsidies. Because voters rewarded the Democrats who support those subsidies in these elections. The Senate GOP is going to probably get a little more pragmatic about ending the shutdown and coming to a compromise. I think the House will continue to the hardliners will continue to to resist this and but there is some policy momentum here will slow down and I think you're going to see a little more caving. So, I think we've got, the 60, 90-day window to come to some concessions, and the moderates will point to last night's, wins as we need to make concessions. We need to get this thing moving and ending as quickly as we can because the voters are just not happy. So how does this set up? Well, the midterms, 2026 next year, Democrats gained. I mean, they've got the strong message right now. They're going to get a lot of money rolling in to support their causes across the country. Don't forget, this is going to be a massive one. Just about every House seat is up for grabs here, if not all of them. I gotta go back and check my notes. But you're going to get a ton of money flowing in, and certainly morale on the Democratic side is way high. It's up. So you're going to get the GOP. It's still structurally, advantaged, but the ceiling's now raised. And you're going to, like I said, though, it's going to be fun to watch the primaries on the Dem side because you're going to have some turmoil. You're going to have, while broad coalitions generally, you're going to have some unclear direction and a big push by the progressive wing. They're coming out hard, they're swinging, and their message is going to be very clear. Just watch, trust me on this. Their message is going to be that the voters, particularly the young voters, want change, and the change is the progressive wing of the Democratic Party. And so when the midterms start shaping up and the Democrats are looking for who's going to be their candidate, you're going to see a lot of money, heavy push behind some other Democratic Socialists of America and others, what I would call the more radical wing of the party. So there, and that's going to be helped a little bit by what happened in California. Prop 50 passed, so it's going to allow the California House maps to be redrawn, redistricted, if you will. This was slated as a Newsom-backed counter to a GOP redistricting in Texas, but it's projected to produce 5 additional Democratic House seats that are going to be, easy wins, no brainers. And, with a close House, that could easily shift the tide next year back, to the Democratic camp. Certainly strengthens the Dems' advantage to getting a majority in the House. And that reduces that understanding, although it's still a year away, in DC parlance, weighs on people's minds and definitely influences how willing people are to fight, because you might have some House members who are a little on the fence, and they're worried that if they push too hard or back policies that were seen as which were countered, in a referendum fashion during this election cycle, they might back away from that and be a little less strenuous in their push because they know they've got a heck of a fight coming up next year, in this midterm election cycle. And so, like I said, emboldens the Democratic side, weakens and puts pressure on the Republican side to be a little more accommodating and perhaps come to the table more to try and end this shutdown, which I think, look, if we can get the shutdown out of the way, that's probably good news for the markets. It's good news for America as a whole. But like I said, it definitely, definitely hardens the resolve. But shutdown, it's a record. Day 36, right? 35 was the old shutdown record. We knocked that right out of the park, and I don't know. That's not a good thing. We want this to end, but it is a record. And certainly, that's going to, the SNAP and the agency impacts have intensified. The furloughs have intensified. And so, you're getting more and more pressure. And certainly, like I said, the White House is, comments all over the board. They were going to have back pay. They were not going to have back pay. Really hurt, the party in the elections last night. So I think you're going to see, some stepping back on that. Maybe, we're not going to just pay, SNAP benefits out of other pockets of money. We're going to actually try and end the shutdown and get this thing moving again. But, and look, the macro hit continues to grow, right? The Congressional Budget Office has now estimated that GDP, we've lost between $7 and $14 billion of GDP. And obviously that's going to continue to rise with, if this thing keeps stretching out. Now, that's not a total loss. We will recoup some of that when the reopening occurs, but we're not going to recoup all of it. That's just not how it works historically. And certainly the longer it drags out, the more that is going to be a problem. But I would think, the election yesterday probably makes getting to a resolution more likely. If I'm going to weigh on it, I think in the Senate, GOP leadership is now, you've seen some signalings of urgency that, let's get on board with this. The Senate has been pushing harder than the House to try and get this thing resolved as it is, but certainly, you're going to see a harder push. You're going to see, the Democratic leverage has been strengthened by this. So, some of the items that, were sticky there might be unstuck by yesterday. So I would expect a push for a short-term continuing resolution, and then a lot of side deal frameworking going on to try and come up with, a more, a resolution outside of that continuing resolution framework, which again just locks in current budgets for a short-term time period. House is a little more dicey. Less likely the House will, is going to come to a resolution without face-saving concessions by both sides. Certainly, the Democrats are going to hold the line now on ACA subsidies and worker back pay. They're not going to let those go. Again, I didn't take that seriously from those comments by Trump on the back pay. More posturing than anything, but it's going to allow the Democrats to say, look, we fought for the common man and we won. House conservatives may dig in briefly, but the pressure is now asymmetric. You're going to have pushes by the moderates to say, hey, look, folks, we got to get a resolution here. We're looking bad. This is not going to end well for the grand old party. So I would say, where I was kind of uncertain about shutdown fixes, I think we could be days to a week or so away from some resolution, whether continuing resolution or a permanent fix. So I think there's probably, you're going to see a lot more brokering of paths to a shutdown resolution than we've seen in the past. So what are those paths? Well, again, Senate, there's a lot of urgency. Short continuing resolution, side deals are likely. So you're going to see a lot of posturing on, setting some side deals up to make this thing more permanent. House conservatives want concessions, but again, momentum favors resolutions. I would expect closure within days to a week. There's still a federal spending pause, even with a continuing resolution. Budgets are locked in. There'll be spending again, but budgets are locked in. So that's certainly going to continue to cause a GDP drag into the fourth quarter. But I think the markets will cheer a credible continuing resolution, because at least at least in the short term, there is some stability, and the markets can predict what is going to happen, particularly from a money flow standpoint. The election definitely lowers what I would call policy risk premium. It's the devil, whether or not you like the outcomes, what the outcomes are. So I could see equities being mildly up, the U.S. dollar probably flat. Don't think it helps Bitcoin that much. We've been watching that. I thought I saw it up today a little bit, but I don't think it's going to be super helpful for that, particularly with the uncertainty that is being caused in New York City. So, there is some, whenever elections occur, and, there's, the market hates uncertainty. Certainty does help. So regardless of the outcome, typically pretty good for equities, or at least neutral. And we'll take that with some of the moves that have occurred lately. So there is a New York City effect, though. The Mamdani thing, I think, is going to be quite interesting. It's a very progressive agenda, whether it's from a rent, a tax, zoning reform. Really showed strong youth and immigrant turnout. That's his base. And you're gonna watch for some. What we need to keep an eye on is over the next 100 days, he's going to make a lot of announcements about who's going to be a part of his administration, and that will be very telling about how radical this city is going to move. And that, of course, being the center of finance in the U.S., has impact. So I think you're going to get a little bit of New York City effect, and that effect again will trickle throughout other districts in the United States leading into the midterms next year. So if you look through that, kind of what I would say the market read through the lens of New York City, you're going to have higher credit cap rates, tighter muni spreads, increased regulatory scrutiny. You're going to have a lot of chatter. All the companies are going to be talking about moving. The moving vans are lined up. Going into this, we'll see if they're lined up coming out of it. You already have some folks that came out saying, we don't have to agree with the election, but we have to work with the results. So how much actually causes an exodus to other parts of the country, we will wait and see. But it is, I think, more going to be about how this flows across other districts, other parts of the country, as the year progresses. I do think there's going to be a mixed look on financial technology, crypto, because that there's going to be a wait and see period on how this is going to impact New York. This is on the crypto side. I reading a couple of different reports from sources I trust that they think that this is not a positive move for crypto. And on the same thing on the financial tech side, because New York City is really the hub for financial tech. So over the next 10 days, start looking for the Senate leaking out ideas that we're going to get a continuing resolution. They always do a little text leak here and there. They can't blame anybody. It was just a text leak. So keep an eye on that. I think you're going to start hearing that chatter for continuing resolution. It's going to be coming out. That will be a positive move for equity. So I would start looking again at some, maybe some stocks that have been beaten down recently. You could see, some movement back up for those if we do get a continuing resolution. I think the House is gonna pull back on the back pay stance. They're definitely going to pay workers who come back to work after the furlough. That's certainly not going to be bad for the economy. And then we're going to look out over the next 10 days, really 100 days, but start with the next 10 on Mamdani transition announcements. And we're going to see just, again, it's New York. It's a microcosm of the rest of the country, but it is New York. And it's going to me, be very telling. The more he pushes for a less moderate administration and a more, call it a very left, a radical administration, you're going to see how emboldened that part of the party really is. And that's going to be very telling for the midterms coming up. And when we start looking at who will be the candidates that the Democrats choose to represent them in the election come November. So, we're going to keep an eye on that. And personally, I think you've got an very emboldened Democratic Socialist of America side of that Democratic Party, and you're going to get a lot of push for more progressive, to use a term, candidates. So let's do a base case, a bull case, and a bear case scenario. My base, I think we're going to get a short-term continuing resolution. A lot of side deals worked out on different aspects of the economy, and I think we could see the shutdown end in a week. That's what I think will probably happen. My crystal ball is not always as clear as it can be, but I think that's probably where we're going. And again, I think a continuing resolution would probably be good for the markets. My bull is a swift full reopening, and if we get that, if it happens quickly. If it looks like government is coalescing and finally coming back together again, I think we could see a nice relief rally in the market that, again, you don't necessarily have to agree with all the results of the elections, but boy, knowing, having some clarity, markets love that. And I think you could get a pretty good pop. And then of course the bear side is, the House, each side continues to dig in, the stalemate extends. Nothing occurs on the shutdown, and the GDP hit gets even more broad. So those are the three scenarios that I would lay out. Again, my base is I think we're going to get some movement in the next next week to 10 days, and that will be positive. And you certainly look at some stocks that we watch here at Option Pit, that we talk about in all of our different different shows. You've got some that we are keeping an eye on right now. Heck, Andrew Giovinazzi and I through Cap Gains, talked about a couple yesterday in our weekly show that we are keeping a close eye on, that we think are primed, if we get the right sentiment, could get a nice little pop. So from a trading standpoint, I don't, just having the election done is positive. Getting the continuing resolution or a broader resolution to the shutdown would be very good for market sentiment moving into the month of November. I don't, for some reason, I can't see the chat. I can't see the comments. I'd love to see if there's any, questions. I'm not sure why I cannot see that. Probably operator error. I will take that one. Uh, but Nick, I don't know if you can put me up here. If not, always good talking to everybody. Enjoy this. Keep your eye on, the little subtle moves in the news, right? Keep your eye on, if there's some leaked text about, there's the potential to get this thing resolved, and that's going to be a very bullish sign for the market. So we'll keep an eye on it. Obviously, that's what we're here to do, is to help all of you, which is what we do best. So for all of us at Option Pit, happy Record Wednesday. Take care, everybody.